Howdy, 7th grade. So in our last couple lessons, before the last test, we were talking about Rome and how Rome split into east side versus west side. Okay, Eastern Roman Empire, Western Roman Empire, and how the Western Roman Empire had a lot of money problems, kept getting attacked, politically unstable, and fell apart. Right. So the west side fell apart, and all these Germanic tribes from Germany, Great Britain, some from Asia, okay, some coming up from Africa and Spain, they're going to take over what used to be the Western Roman Empire. The eastern side, they've got the money, okay, they can still pay for protection, they've got some organization politically, so they go on for hundreds of years after this. But the western side fell apart. We're going to talk about what happens to that western side, what happens to Western Europe after Rome is no more. Okay. Now, we got a couple maps to look at here. This is kind of the invasion map, right? So we got the split right here. Here's the eastern side. They look like they're doing pretty well. They have to fight off some enemies here, but it's not too bad. They start paying some of them, so they're all good. But what we see is we've got all these different tribes, all these barbarians. Remember, barbarians means not Roman. They start coming in, attacking cities, attacking towns, stealing stuff, killing anybody who's in the way. And eventually, western side of Rome falls apart. What you see basically is all those invasions, all those barbarian tribes, they come in and they start setting up kingdoms. Each tribe kind of carves out a little piece of land for themselves. And you see all these different colors all over the map here. Those are the barbarian tribes, the Germanic kingdoms coming in and slicing up Rome. Slicing it up like it's a birthday cake and taking whatever piece they want. So when you see a map like this, hint, hint, pops up on the test, that's what's happening in the Western Roman Empire right here, okay, or Western Europe, is the Germanic tribes, the barbarians coming in, slicing up, forming their own kingdoms in what used to be Rome. All right, so don't be surprised if you see a question about that. There's lots of different tribes. Now, folks, I'm going to move kind of quickly here. We move kind of quick in class. You got a lot of this stuff in your notes. If you're somebody who likes to have it filled in, every line filled in, feel free to go through the Nearpod, fill it in. Feel free to slow down this video, write it down. But if you're like me and you're a big picture person, okay, buckle up. We're going to move kind of fast. What you need to know is the Germanic tribes, the barbarian tribes, they come in and they carve up what used to be the Roman Empire. They take pieces for themselves and they start their own kingdoms. There's lots of different groups. We've got the Goths, lots of different kinds of those, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, the Huns get in on the action. Okay, we keep moving. We see groups like the Vandals coming in, the Gauls. We're going to see other groups coming as well, the Jutes, the Angles, the Saxons. Lots of different invaders coming in and slicing up what used to be Rome, starting their own kingdoms. Big one we are going to spend some time on is the Franks. The Lombards are going to get on the action as well. And all you need to pretty much know, big picture for the test, is these barbarian tribes come in and they divide up Western Rome into their own kingdoms. Okay. Now, like I said, you can always go back to this Nearpod or slow down this video, pause it if you'd like to fill in the notes and make sure every line is filled in. Okay. Now, there is going to be something in Western Europe that does survive. Right? Rome falls apart in Western Europe, but the church is going to survive. Towards the end of Western Roman Empire, 313 AD, the Emperor Constantine actually makes Christianity legal. Remember, it started in Christianity, was just a small, tiny religion, and most of Rome was polytheistic. Then the Christians got blamed for things because the Romans were superstitious about natural disasters. Christianity became illegal. Christians were persecuted and killed because of the religion. But a lot of poor Christians, a lot of poor Romans, slaves liked Christianity because of the promise of an afterlife. It gains in some popularity. Eventually, emperors like Constantine become Christian. Now powerful people in Rome are Christians. Christianity becomes legal again. And eventually, in 391, other religions become outlawed. So Christianity becomes the official religion of Rome. Well, Christians all over Western Europe start building churches. As soon as it becomes legal, they start building churches all over the place. These are religious buildings for Christians. And so the church is going to spread, and Christianity is going to spread and get bigger and bigger all over Western Europe. So even when Rome, Western Rome, falls apart, okay, the barbarians come in and they carve it up and they take pieces and make their own kingdoms, the church has survived, though. Christianity, the religion, survives. And in fact, one of the reasons why it survives is the Roman Catholic Church, or the Christian church at the time, uses the Roman Empire's organizational model, how they set up their government. They use that to create their own structure. I'm going to pause the video for a second and kind of pull up a chart that we're working on together in class. Now, folks, in class, okay, if you're in person and we did this, you got a paper copy of this. If you're at home learning virtually, you got a ClassKick link to this. Basically, you got a blank version of this document. And it's basically talking about the Catholic Church, or the Christian Church, how they copied the Roman government when they set up their organization, and how that's actually going to help them survive. Even when the Western Roman Empire falls apart, the church survives because of this organization. So on this line right here, I don't have it filled in right here, but basically it says, who did the Catholic Church copy when organizing their structure? Was the Romans. Okay, so put the Romans here. How so? Well, we got two sides here. We got the Roman Empire, we got the church. We start at the very top. The Roman Empire, they had an emperor. It's one person in charge of everything. The church, they also had one person in charge of everything, and that was the Pope. Okay, so kind of like the emperor. Next, we've got the assistants. We're going to assist the emperor on this side, assist the Pope on this side. Cardinals here. Okay, on the Roman government side, they called it magistrates. Okay. The Romans then kind of carved up their territory into dioceses, or diocese is a fancy word for districts, so that people could kind of help the Pope look after things. Help the emperor look after things. Okay, vicarius is their official title over here in Rome. And the church, they called them bishops and archbishops. Okay, archbishops are going to look over cities, major cities. And so they kind of look over smaller areas. The Pope and the emperor, they look over all the areas. Bishops, vicarius, look over small areas. Then they break it down even further. Okay, on the Roman emperor side, or Roman government side, they've got governors, consularies, basically people in charge of small cities or territories. Over here on the church side, they've got people in charge of small areas as well. We call them priests, in charge of one church. The fancy word they used for church was parish. So basically, you've got one person at the top, and then lots of people underneath them helping them to run the show. And so you either have a paper copy, you can use this on your test, because I believe there's a question about this on the test. So rewind this video, pause it, fill it in if you need help, if you didn't get it in class, or if you are virtual, go to your ClassKick. Okay, fill this in. You can use it on your test. Okay, a couple final notes on the church structure. What's going to basically help the church survive the chaos when Western Rome is falling apart and the barbarians are slicing it up and carving it up. The church survives, okay, because of not only their organization, how they set themselves up, but also because of what they meant to the people in Europe. Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. So each church that was built was called a parish. That was the Catholic or the Christian church name at the time, was a parish. And the leader of the individual church was a priest. Several parishes were grouped together in what's called dioceses, which is the Roman word for district. So they even used some of the Roman words when they were organizing themselves. And in charge of that was a bishop. The most important bishops were typically put in charge of big cities, churches in big cities, and they were called archbishops. Over time, the Archbishop of Rome, city of Rome, still exists. It wasn't Roman anymore. It was owned by barbarians, right? But that archbishop, in charge of that church, ended up becoming the Pope. Basically the one person in charge of all the churches. And they're going to lead all the Roman Catholic churches. Now, the Pope was the sole ruler over the Catholic Church, the Christian church at the time, just like the emperor was the sole ruler, one ruler over all of Rome. So there again, that comparison, that's going to be helpful in the test. Okay? And a lot of times the Pope would give advice to the kings of the barbarian tribes in matters of politics, in laws. Okay? And the people actually had to obey the king's laws unless they went against the canon or the church laws. The church laws were considered the most important because the church, they kind of answered to God, right? And the religion was very important to the people. So if you went against the church, you were going against God. And so all the kings typically, when they wrote their laws, they gave rules, they would have to follow the church laws as well. if somebody disobeyed the Pope or went against the church laws, they could be excommunicated or kicked out of the church. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to us today because you get kicked out of a church, you go to a different church, or you switch religions, or whatever, right? But in Europe at the time, in the Middle Ages, is this time period we're talking about, the church ran the hospitals, the church ran the schools, the church gave shelter and food to travelers. Okay, the church were the spiritual leaders, right, of the major religion of the time. So the church was very important. You wanted to follow their laws because you didn't want to get in trouble with them. Because if you got kicked out, it's going to be a major problem. Life's going to be really tough for you. We'll get into more of that later. Okay, but for right now, if you need to rewind the video a little bit to fill in your chart, you're going to be able to use it on the test later. Okay, very important. If you have any questions on it, send me an email and I'll help you out. Thanks, folks.